One of the most fascinating intersections between Jungian thought and quantum science lies in the realm of patterns and mathematical order. Jung and von Franz believed that the archetypes of the collective unconscious include fundamental ordering principles that can manifest both psychologically and physically. As mentioned previously, Jung suspected that number was one such archetypal principle, a kind of primordial ordering factor in the cosmos. He noted how numbers seem to be discovered and invented simultaneously, an idea suggesting that numerical structures exist out there in nature, sort of like the orbital ratios of planets, the symmetry of crystals, the quantization of energy levels, how 0 is 0, how 1 is 1, and those are definable being what they are. They're intrinsically discovered and invented, and are reflected in here in the psyche, in our innate sense of numbers, the numerical motifs of myths, etc. Modern science is too struck by the uncanny effectiveness of mathematics in describing reality. Physicist Eugene Wigner famously wrote about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in the natural sciences. Some scientists and philosophers even muse that mathematics is the fundamental fabric of reality, a view associated with Pythagoreanism or mathematical Platonianism. Jung's viewpoint was slightly different. Number is both quantitative and qualitative, bridging the material and mental by providing a common language of order. And it's something that you hear a lot in science, is math is the language of the universe. Marie von Franz, Number and Time, delved into this idea with rich examples. To briefly illustrate the qualitative side of numbers, consider how certain numbers show up in physics and seem almost mythic in their significance. For example, the number 4 is pervasive in Jungian psychology as the number of wholeness. Think of the mandala with 4 quadrants or the 4 classical elements. There's also all of the divine numbers, the angelic numbers, repeating numbers, patterns of numbers, etc. You can really get deep with number theory. And intriguingly, physics has 4 fundamental forces. There's 4 space-time dimensions in relativity, and many stable structures like crystals or the DNA double helix with base pair groupings have 4-fold symmetries. So is this just a coincidence? Or does it reflect something deeper about our universe? The number 137 is another almost archetypal number in physics. It's approximately the inverse of the fine structure constant, a mysterious dimensionless constant governing electromagnetic interactions, and it fascinated Wolfgang Pauli, Jung's friend, to the point that he dreamt about it and considered it significant also to the psyche. One thing that I find interesting about it is 7 and 3 and 1 is also 11. So it also reduces to a divine number if you pay attention to numerology or like that sort of stuff. And so while we have to be careful to avoid numerology in the superstitious sense, von Franz's approach was more sophisticated. She gathered cross-cultural evidence that numbers structuring the physical world often carry psychic significance. For instance, binary, or two-ness, underlies computer code, yes-no logic, but also the yin-yang duality in Eastern philosophy and the conscious-unconscious duality in psychology. Trinity, or threeness, appears in Christian theology in the threefold process of thesis and synthesis in Hegelian thought, and interestingly, in the 3 families of fundamental particles in physics. None of these parallels prove anything by themselves, but collectively they hint, at least symbolically, that the human mind's archetypal structures and the architecture of the physical world may spring from the same source. Von Franz wrote that numbers seem to be autonomous entities with their own reality and agency, almost like Platonic forms or living symbols that transcend individual consciousness. They are the skeletal framework of the objective psyche, even as they are the scaffold of scientific laws. This bold idea places mathematics in a mystical light. Perhaps our equations work so well in physics because the universe itself is imbued with the archetypal structure that also shapes our psyche. From the quantum physics side, one could note that quantum theory is profoundly mathematical and pattern-based, often revealing discrete numerical fingerprints in nature, like the Fibonacci sequence. Some physicists have even speculated that consciousness might resonate with certain mathematical structures. For example, Roger Penrose suggested that the very non-computational quality of human understanding might connect with the mathematically complex world of Platonic forms and advanced geometry in fundamental physics, as he explored in books like The Emperor's New Mind. While Penrose's theory is different from Fagin's, both converge on the sense that mind has a place in the deep mathematical order of the cosmos, not as a late anomaly, but as something woven in. The emerging field of quantum cognition also treats the mathematics of quantum theory as a useful model for human decision-making and perception. It uses the form of quantum math to capture the probabilistic and context-dependent nature of our thinking, albeit without claiming neurons are literally quantum computing. This again points to a structural parallel. The logic of the mind and the logic of quantum reality might share similar principles, like complementarity, indeterminacy, superposition of possibilities, and so on. We might also consider the perspective of dual aspect monism, an idea that grew partly out of the Young-Pauli collaboration. Dual Young monism posits that there is one underlying reality, the one world, or unus mundus, which has both a mental aspect and a physical aspect. So it is one underlying reality with two aspects, an inner world and an outer world. So that's why it's a dual aspect monism. In this view, an archetype could be thought of as a fundamental pattern of that one reality, which can manifest psychologically whenever observed from the inside, or mind side, and physically whenever observed from the outside, or matter side. Number can be such a pattern, and so could the archetype of self, or wholeness, or of the interplay of opposites. Modern physicists, philosophers such as Bernard Carr, echo this when they propose that we need additional degrees of freedom to model consciousness, perhaps even extra dimensions beyond the familiar four of spacetime, wherein those archetypal patterns reside and influence both mind and matter. This brings us to the notion of extra dimensions and the 4D hypersphere in understanding consciousness.